led by Prof Carol Richards from the Queensland University of Technology and Karen Greaves from Lendlease. This is another one of our long-standing projects, been with us since the get-go of the CRC. So thanks for Carol and Karen for joining us. This project exists to develop Australia's first digitally integrated circular food economy in a distinct geographical setting, and in the context being the Yarrabilba Master Plan community. And in doing so, foster local employment, economic growth, environmental sustainability, and socio-technical advances in the biomass value chain. So, Carol, great to see you again. And as you said to me once when you were farewelling me after a face-to-face meeting about 2 years ago, give it up. Over to you, Carol.
Thanks very much for that. Just let me share my screen. I just got permission to do that. Thanks, Dave, and hello to everybody. It's a little bit strange from this end because it's quite hard to see how many people are in the audience there, but hello to all of you invisible people out there. And just to start to say a really big thank you to Food Agility team and to Dave for putting this on. I think this is great that we can all connect as researchers around the topics, the kind of work that we're doing here. So I think what my team has been doing, it might be a little bit of a departure from some of the usual digital agriculture types projects, and that's because it's social science based, and also because it's working with the community as well. So our industry partner is Lendlease, but our end users are actually residents of a master planned community in the area of Logan, which is on the outskirts of Brisbane, and reasonably well known around southeast Queensland as being a fairly low socioeconomic community as well. So already outlining the challenges there, Dave, for you to get later. So let me start with the site of the experiment for the digital circular food economy. So this is a snapshot of a drone shot of Yarrabilba. And as I said, it's a Lendlease master planned community. It's about 2,000 hectares in size, and it's in the first 10 years now of its rollout, with about 10,000 people now residing in Yarrabilba. It's expected to be have a population of 45,000 people by 2042. So it's going to be a town the size of Gladstone, if that's a point of reference. There's going to be 11 schools. There's 4 there at the moment. And the main demographic there is young families. So the challenge, well, Lendlease approached us at QUT and asked us if we would partner with them on an urban agriculture project. So they wanted to set up a local food economy. And as Lendlease would say, their 2 main priorities are selling land and building community. So it had a very strong community engagement component embedded in this, or it was actually needed to do this. Some of the other issues that Lendlease are keen to address are the issues of waste and also environmental sustainability on their developments. Having said that, we're dealing with fairly complex issues, so very poor soils, not exactly the place you would start to do an urban agriculture project. Quite often, you'd be trying to grow food on builders' rubble, and also a new and emerging community. So prior to Lendlease acquiring the land, it was a pine plantation. So we're trying to engage with a community where there was no community there before. So just there, you can see the issue of food waste. So this was our entry point, trying to address food waste. And you can see the extent of the problem there, that if global food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter after the US and China. So it's a wicked problem, and it's one of the problems that we're trying to address from the ground up with this project. The motley crew on the right is pretty much, is more or less all of our team, and we're quite a multidisciplinary team. We've got multidisciplinary problems to address, and we've got team from law, soil science, data science, food waste, software development. So quite a challenge, but quite a team to address that as well. So I just thought I'd throw this into, this is either the time where you go and make a cup of tea or just fall off your chair in despair, because we're social scientists, we like to theorize change, and we're using sociotechnical transitions theory as a lens to understanding the how we can start to address the problems before us. And we're talking about creating a niche. A niche is a concept from Sociotechnical Transitions theory, where it accepts that many of these major wicked problems, including food waste, are systemic issues, and that people, institutions, organizations, and cultures end up being locked in to certain unsustainable practices. I guess we can see that from our everyday lives, even just thinking about transition to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. In the food waste sector, some of the lock-ins relate to private supermarket standards, the discarding of edible food that doesn't meet the cosmetic appeal for industry, and also that we're fairly trapped culturally and into a linear economy. So where food waste goes straight to landfill, it's not intercepted and it doesn't get reused, as a generalization, but there are some improvements in that space. So what we're trying to do then is, how do we overcome this system resistance and lock-ins that are strongly embedded in incumbent food systems? How do we destabilize the current regimes, albeit in small and experimental ways, to create a space for the support of alternative niches? And how do we demonstrate what's possible to people who haven't really sat down to think of this before? So this is not necessarily a priority for the people of Yarrabilba, but we're trying to introduce this as an issue to be solved. This has led to us designing a digital circular food economy, which I'll take you through step by step next. And I know you're probably burning to read more about socio-technical transitions theory, so there's a little screenshot of a paper there. I know Dave will be reading it tonight in bed with his little hat on. So what's a circular food economy? You turn your camera on to give me a glare. So what's a circular food economy? Well, if you look on the left there, the linear economy is just food waste to landfill, basically. And let me take you to the right-hand column there with a circular food economy. So it's about designing out waste, keeping products and materials in use for longer, and regenerating natural systems. So I mentioned the terrible soil. I won't use the word that our soil scientists used to describe it. It was a very technical term, beginning with S and ending in T. And we really do need to do some regeneration work there on the natural soils. Okay, so practical challenges. We can't do anything on a residential community until we can engage a community. So community engagement is the big one. So what we had to do in this project, and I should say we're in the last 6 months now, so we've learned a lot and we're still learning. But first of all, we had to engage our end users, so the residents on the estate, and then experiment with them and work alongside them in developing circular economy and digital solutions. So one of our team did a little flow chart. I've just given you the first few layers here of how do you start to do this? How do you start to engage a community? And I think for those of you working more broadly in digital agriculture, this is along the same lines as adoption of innovation. You know, how do you convince people that they need something that they've not even considered before? So we had 2 points of entry that I'd like to talk to you about today. One of them is through the whole community. And this was working with the Good Foundation and the Jamie Oliver's Ministry of Food. And you can see there the headlines that we had in the local media that Jamie's Ministry of Food is coming to Yarrabilba. In the picture on the right there, that's the mobile food kitchen that the Good Foundation used, and that travelled across Queensland to be with us at Yarrabilba. The space there was flattened by Lend-Lease, and it was a car park that we repurposed to a little circular food economy showcase. So as you can see there in the foreground, there's some eggplant growing in raised garden beds or wicking beds. And what we tried to do was demonstrate a circular economy in one place. So as I mentioned before, we're talking to people who have not necessarily considered this before. If you think about the hierarchy of needs, this is probably, you know, thinking about recycling food waste and growing food locally is probably not on the priority list for local residents. And so we had a few things there. We had the grow beds, we had a composting system set up, and then we had the Ministry of Food. So we could walk people through how that system worked. Lend-Lease subsidised the food kitchen, and we had great sign up from the community to do these cooking programs. I should also say we did a survey when we entered the community at Yarrabilba, and there was quite high levels of food insecurity. So measures of food insecurity, there are a number of measurements that you can use, but one that we asked about was the number of people that would run out of food by the end of the week and not be able to afford to buy more. That's around about 8 to 10% on the community. And then the next level of food insecurity is probably about 1 in 5 people there that at some point in a year they run out of money and unable to purchase food. So we know producing food on site is also important, another way to get food into food insecure families. My little COVID virus thing there is just to remind me to tell you that we actually didn't get to the end of this, that COVID happened, lockdown happened, we had to shut the truck down, and we had to abandon the site completely. So Lend-Lease wouldn't allow any activity on the site during the lockdown period, but also for a couple of months after that. So we walked away from that. And one thing we did find out is that those wicking beds work fantastically when you abandon them, because they hold a layer of water at the bottom, and the roots wick up the nutrients from the soil and the water there. So we know that kind of worked out quite well. The second point of entry was the school, and again a few late starts and interruptions and bumping out of the school during lockdown as well. But we actually started with a brand new school. So that image on the left there is us meeting with the principal, one of the landscape designers, and some of our team to see how we could actually integrate this into the building of the school right at the beginning there. The school opened in 2020, and we've been working with them since that time. One of the main things that we wanted to do is think about how do we incentivize engagement. So we know from previous research that it's often not enough just to rely on altruism in terms of recycling or engaging in pro-environmental practices. So we set about developing a scheme thinking, how can we encourage involvement? So we built an app, and we tried to gamify the idea of bringing your compost into school. So the app has a number of features. It includes information, just why compost, what can go into compost, how you can use it, an animation aimed at the children about engaging, also a quiz in there, and this incentive scheme. So you can see on the right-hand side there, the incentive scheme for this project has been around giving house points to the school. So the kids that engage in this can get points for bringing in compost. And the feedback from the school has been quite positive, because previously they've only really given house points for sporting activities, and now they can start to give house points for environmental activities. So kids can bring in the kitchen scraps from home, or they can collect them from the neighbourhood. They can take these buckets home, and then we just also had to work out how to scan in and out the buckets, so we could keep track of the kids that were contributing and then give them house points. So a eureka moment there for this project was we were talking to the kids and asking them how do they think they could do this? How could we work together to get this happening? And one of the kids just said, why don't you treat them like library books? And that was a eureka moment from a 12-year-old, because what you can see there in the middle bucket is a barcode on there, and we can scan them in and out using the same technology now for the library. So we've got access to the back end of the catalogue for the library system, and we've just got the compost bins in there listed like books. The teachers have also got the school app for checking those in and out on their phones, so the compost can go straight to the garden and get checked in and out by teachers. So we've had quite a big program of working with the kids, because while we're working on the digital aspects of this, digital isn't a great starting point. We have to have something to anchor the digital to. So we had to start learning about soil and compost. So we've had programs with the kids where we've got engaged here with some soil cores, trying to make a soil sausage to see how much clay was in there, and then also taking turns to stirring the compost. Who knew it would be such a popular activity? We also wanted to teach the kids about methane production from rotting food waste and to make sure the compost system actually doesn't produce more methane. So we've worked with Substation 33, which is an e-waste organisation, and they've made us a methane sensor out of e-waste. So you can see on the picture on the left there, there's the little solar panel, that's on top of the sensor. There's some second picture is an Arduino with some batteries in there, some recycled batteries from old laptops that get recharged through the solar power. And then there's some old mobile phone 3G technology in there and a SIM card. And so we push data into the Internet of Things, to Things board, and then push that into the app that the school kids use as well. So there you can see this all set up together and with the sensor going into the compost. So doing this, I think the main advantage of this has been to teach the kids about methane, and they can actually get hands-on and really understand why we're doing this. We've worked with a small group of kids. It's probably about 40 children that we've been working with, and then they're going to become the ambassadors for the project for the school. So you can see the little logo that the kids made there, their Compost Warriors logo that they put on their bin. So they've taken responsibility for a lot of this, a lot of the projects, and are slowly taking ownership now as they understand it more, and we hand more over to them. So just to show you, for the data scientists out there, I thought we'd throw in some graphs. So you can see some of the things that we can measure there. In terms of also the, actually this isn't all directly from this, from the methane sensor, there's some other things that come onto Things board as well through Substation 33. But we've been monitoring methane levels and then pushing this into the app here in this fairly user-friendly way, rather than having the kids trying to decipher the data at this stage. So we've also been teaching them to grow food. So you can see the early days here when we first set up these wicking beds in the background. This is them having a lesson on seed propagation. And then this is the result a little bit down the track where they're growing a number of things, including some mustard seed here as for pollinators, to attract pollinators into the garden. We've also been teaching the kids, we're joining the dots here with all the different aspects of this program. So we're teaching the kids about digital agriculture and the Internet of Things. So we've taken them down to Substation 33, which is in their region. And Substation 33, they recycle e-waste and make very cool things out of e-waste, but they also run a social program as well. So they have people there breaking down e-waste from disability services and other community services, community service organisations. So they welcomed the kids down there, so they got to see how the sensor was made, and they got to engage in breaking down the e-waste as well. And then the picture on the left there, you can just see the students in the classroom working with the app that we've developed for them. One of the interesting moments about the app as well is we were told at first it was push button, and the students rolled their eyes at us and told us we were, we were so 2018 in this technology that you don't push buttons anymore, you have to swipe. And so our software developer went back and made them swipeable features on the app as well. So pretty much in a nutshell, I mean, you can think about this as the circle here. This is the digital overlay. So you've got the food growing system as one system, like a natural system. And then we've got a system of Internet of Things that surrounds this as well as another layer of engagement and functionality. So we've worked our way at this stage through these first three components, that we've got the food waste coming into the school, we've produced compost, and from the compost we've been growing food. The last one, the exchange one, we're not quite as advanced with that as we would like to be, from a few holdups with COVID, etc. But what we can do is when we produce enough volume of food, then we can start to connect the community around selling and exchanging. We can look at time banking to have people involved in working on the food circular economy, and they might be paid in vegetables or seeds or some kind of produce as well. And so that's pretty much in a nutshell of a 2.5 years worth of project in 20 minutes. I think some of the things that we've learned from this is that the prototype, it is a generic prototype, so we've designed it so it can be extended into other community settings, so other schools, residential care or retirement living, potentially Indigenous communities to teach about agriculture. Because it's modular, it can be scaled up, and it's a low cost entry point as well, which is important for the types of communities that we've been working with. So that a lot of the materials that we've been using are recycled or recyclable. And then there's lots of potential for exchange. So for this project, we've been using house points because we didn't really have anything to exchange, but we've also thought we could branch out into local cafes and take their food waste, and in exchange we could have vouchers of some sort. So good for the cafe because they're diverting their food waste from landfill. There's a social license attached to that as well, but also in Queensland now we have a landfill levy. So there could be a potential there for some engagement. We're making, towards the end of the project now, a how-to guide, so this can be replicated on other communities. So we're putting that together through a website. We're also making the code available, and Substation 33 are in the process of making a short video of how to make a methane sensor from e-waste. Actually the only cost for the methane sensor is the nose of the sensor, and I think that was just under $10. So the rest can be done through repurposed materials and a lot of labor. And so I guess this is the forever issue about the uptake and adoption, that we're going to continue to need creative solutions, need to have good solid engagement with our end users to see what they actually want, how they might use this technology, and just keep this human aspect of human computer design or interaction central to this project as well. So that, I think, is me, apart from the acknowledgements, which of course Food Agility, that's on all of the slides, and the rest of our team there. You can see some of the disciplinary backgrounds from them. Dave, you're going to get me now because I've said about your little hat that you wear for bed.
I was struggling to find one, but I guarantee you, I was like a deer in the headlights. Okay? Now, and I have to say that I am like a deer in the headlights. This is an incredible project because it's the human side of all of our projects that we totally underestimate and undervalue. And this has brought to light the criticality of that interaction. And you have this amazing ability to tick off all the questions that come in advance, but there were 3 that survived. So if you don't know,
go for it.
So, well, first of all, it's not lost. It's obviously not lost on this particular person. So there's 2 components of your engagement. There's a community engagement, the households, the Ministry of Food, the engagement on site, and through the kids, through the children, through the school. And of course, the survivor of the process is the school one because of the COVID challenges. Here's a question. So this one's from John. Are you getting signals that the engagement through the schools is getting deeper into the household, like giving you traction into the household? Are there any signals that you've picked up, you know, unofficial or official, along the way of the depth of engagement in households through the school kids?
Yeah, we've been getting good feedback. Some of this has definitely sorted out the kids that are interested from the kids that are not. And for the kids that are interested, I think this is it's been amazing to see the transformation of them, and we've had some really lovely feedback from the parents and grandparents of some of the kids as well. I think one thing is that they didn't know that they were interested in this kind of thing until they tried it. And some kids have started composting at home, which in a way it's a bit of a challenge to the project because it was that successful. It's like we need to do this at home and not bring it into the school. So some ways we don't get the scraps into the schools, but it's still a good outcome all of the same. And we have one little boy that is really, you know, it's really touched us all. A little boy with autism in one of the classrooms. And when we first got there, he was kind of very disengaged, very distressed. And slowly he's just come out of his shell and he's really engaged with this project. And so there's all sorts of benefits beyond the agriculture and beyond the digital. There's the community connection, you know, there's a chance to engage with people. I've seen the other kids in the class supporting this little boy to help him do some of these things as well. And he's crazy on turning the compost. So the benefits are almost immeasurable, and we're still learning and seeing those. And plus we get really nice compost too. You're on mute, Dave.
just for the record, this is my mute jar. I will put another $1 in it. I'm hurting big time. So thank you, Carol. Has this program, this is from Emma, so has this program been linked to meeting STEM targets, for example, in relation to school or regional, that whole science, technology, engineering formality? Because someone said they'd love to see this replicated in their region. That was from Emma. So STEM.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, not at this school because they actually engage in project-based learning. So we're also learning the pedagogy of different schools through this. So they don't actually separate out their subjects. It's all integrated. So I think by default, we're doing STEM with the kids, but they don't do maths and English, and they don't sit down and do those kinds of classes at this school. They do everything through projects. So we're one of their projects in their project-based learning approach. Another school that we've started to engage with, Fortitude Valley Secondary School, also do project-based learning. So I think we've really appealed to those kinds of places because we are, we do lend ourselves well to project-based learning. But I think we can really embed this as a real world approach to STEM and something that's engaging and gets kids out of the classroom as well. So I think there is lots of potential there, and there's been lots of interest from other schools.
Cool. A question from Hazel. So very interesting program, body of research. So nice to see them school kids being engaged. What was the most common What was the most common response from kids? Wow, do we really use waste that much, or was it around the sorts of waste? What was the kids' eureka moment, having shared already your eureka moment?
Oh, that's sneaky, isn't it? That's a great question, Hazel. Thank you for that. I think the kids' eureka moment has been actually being able to taste the food that they grow. And it sounds, if you think about the Yarrabilba community, they're big houses on small blocks and people are not really growing food and there's not the space to grow food. So this might be the first time that this has happened where the kids have grown something and been able to eat it. So they're quite surprised at that. They're quite surprised at what things are. So we grew some snow peas and they were amazed that you could just eat them off the plant. You could just eat a snow pea without cooking it. And the other thing that they've been really fascinated with is the worm farm. So the worms have been taken out of the worm farm, polished, named, and put into compost bins. So I think the natural aspects of this, getting your hands dirty, getting into the soil, getting into the worm farm, starting to look at the creatures that develop in the compost has been a really big learning for the kids as well. I think there's, I think integrating nature into the curriculum as well, almost by stealth. Okay,
now you've had 20 minutes to tell us about 2 years. I have a question for you. Earlier in this year, you and the project team wrote quite a substantial paper around the paradoxes of food waste in the Hawley system. In 1 minute, what are the paradoxes of food waste reduction in our Hawley system?
Well, gosh, that was a tricky one, Dave. There are many paradoxes because I think what happens in the food system is that waste can be created in one place, but the blame for the waste gets pushed down the supply chain. So one of the paradoxes has been looking at the supermarkets and their private standards, so cosmetic standards that an apple needs to be, 43 millimeters and not 47 millimeters, and therefore that food gets rejected and stays on the farm. So I think that's one paradox, is that the supermarkets are they're scoring about 3% of all of the food waste in the supply chain at the moment, but in reality we know they're causing an awful lot more. There's one paradox in a minute.
And it wasn't going to be a dollar response. Thank you, Carol. Look, on behalf of everyone, thank you and your team for a great presentation. It's a fantastic project, and to be honest, I think we're learning way more from you than you from us, because as I said, this is a totally misunderstood or not understood area for many people in the other science area. So really appreciate your ongoing insights and mentorship for many of us. So thank you, Carol, and thank you, team.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Dave.